MOvember 2020, day 26. I'm going to pull tonight from Breaking Free, which is an old workbook of Pia Mellodys. And what I was talking to someone about today was how people pleasing can really white ant a relationship with anybody, whether it be a loved one, a colleague, a friend, even a stranger, where we don't act in our own best interest. So I'm going to just do a short video tonight on the characteristics of people pleasing and sort of how to break free from it. So I'll pull in with a little bit about step 6, which is what this is highlighting. So this is step 6 from the 12-step philosophy. By doing steps 4 and 5, so taking a personal, fearless and thorough moral inventory and sharing that with God and another, you began to see yourself as having problems. These problems are defects of character that come out of your experiences of powerlessness and the unmanageable consequences of the core symptoms. Codependent character defects are attitudes, feelings, and behaviors that you hang on to that can sabotage your happiness and relationships and keep you from taking responsibility for your own life and recovery. Once you have recognized these character defects, you can make a decision that you are ready to have a higher power remove them. Recognizing how these character defects are sabotaging your life by affecting you and also the people in relationship with you is a painful process. It has been said that recovery is a pain-driven process, and until you get into enough pain, you are not motivated to do anything about genuine recovery. So it asked you to do some background reading, so I'll just read here that following other descriptions of several typical character defects many codependents have, along with a discussion of how each defect sabotages your life when you try to relate to others using these shortcomings. We have not attempted to list every possible character defect, nor do we mean to say that each codependent has them all. Use this section as a beginning place from which you draw up your personal list of character defects, and read each description, then do the writing exercise for any that apply to you before proceeding to the next one. So the one I'm going to focus on is people pleasing, but this is quite a impacting piece of literature, because the ones here that when you go through them, people pleasing, perfectionism, striving for power, financial problems, shutting others out, helplessness, overwhelming others with your needs and wants, expressing feelings explosively, a lack of passion, lying, dishonesty, untrustworthiness. It sort of goes on. It is pretty inappropriate social behavior. It's quite an amazing list. Inadequate or unfulfilling sex life, irresponsibility, overcommitment. It's thorough and helpful. Just confronting, like she says, it gets us in enough pain to want to do something about it. But this one today is going to be people pleasing, and she puts it into 3 sections: dishonesty, unnecessary arguments, and resentment. So people pleasing is dishonest, can provoke unnecessary arguments, and can produce resentment towards others. Here's a brief description of each of these 3 sabotaging effects. Dishonesty. You give up what you really want to do and do what someone else wants because your doing so pleases that person. You avoid saying what you mean because you believe saying something else would please that person more. You make commitments to people for things that you do not want to do and cannot do without a lot of trouble, even things you don't know how to do, so that you have to go through a learning process before you can accomplish the thing that you have agreed to do. You deceive the other person into thinking, 1, that you like to do these things because you commit to do them. 2, that these things you say represent your true feelings, your true self. And 3, that you do and say these things because they enhance your own life and make you happy in and of themselves. How this sabotages your life? The other person cannot relate to the real person you are because you have hidden yourself from him or her. Unnecessary arguments. When you are people-pleasing, you are embroiled in commitments and activities that do not enhance your life or bring you joy, but you tell yourself you are willing to do them to please the other person, and that person's pleasure enhances your life. The problem with this is, if the person doesn't exhibit the pleasure you think he or she should, or doesn't express gratitude for your participation in the activity, your life is not enhanced and you feel anger, fear, and pain. The purpose of putting yourself through these undesirable behaviors and commitments has backfired, and instead of enhancement, you feel diminished by your anger, fear, and or pain. In your codependence, you are very likely to hold the other person responsible for your diminishment. Since you have deceived the other person into thinking you chose those commitments and behaviors, expressing your anger directly sounds bizarre to the other person. The other person's response is something like, "But I thought you wanted to eat at the restaurant," or "I thought you preferred to go alone to pick the kids up at camp." Your deception causes an automatic deadlock in the communication. How this sabotages your life. The other person is deceived, baffled, and defensive. You have subjected that person to unnecessary arguments and attacks, growing out of your misdirected anger at the person for things he or she has no awareness of. And the third piece is resentment. When you engage in people-pleasing, you often assume that a non-spoken agreement exists between you and the other person and that he or she will treat you in a similar people-pleasing manner. After you've given up what you want to do in favor for pleasing the other person, a time comes where you expect the same courtesy from the other person. When the person who has no idea this non-spoken agreement is in your mind does not reciprocate, resentment builds and you subject the other person to your retaliation, whether it be aggressive and outright anger or passive retaliation on a more subtle level. I'm not talking about when you make a clear choice to compromise and, for example, go with the other person to a certain movie as long as the reason for your choice is clear to the other person. For example, a choice between seeing one or two movies, a comedy or spy mystery, comes up. You might prefer the spy mystery while the other person really enjoys comedies more. If you can say, "Look, comedies are not my favorite kind of movie, but I'll go with you because you want to see it and because I want to be with you. But next time we go to the movies, I'd like to see the spy mystery and would enjoy having you go with me." That is a clear communication. Even if the other person does not ever want to go to the spy mystery, or he or she is deceived into thinking you preferred, he or she isn't deceived into thinking you preferred the comedy. The situation becomes people-pleasing when you pretend to prefer the comedy and withhold from the other person the honest reason you are going to the comedy. Then later, when you bring up the spy mystery movie and the other person's response is lukewarm or negative, resentment pops up. You think, "That's not fair. I cheerfully went to the comedy with him or her, and now it's his or her turn. He or she never does things I want to do." And you turn sour, sullen, distancing yourself, and the other person has no idea what's going on for you. So how this sabotages your life: the other person is subjected to your unexpected retaliation methods when your resentment comes up about something he or she did not have any information about. So the questions Pia puts down to say, well, listen, let's get aware of this. How do I do it? So she says, use the following space to describe how people-pleasing operates in your life, if it does, and use the questions as a guideline to write about it. So the key questions are, how does people-pleasing harm you and keep you from being in recovery? How does it affect others adversely and block intimacy? Are you ready to have a higher power remove this defect and learn how to live without it? And if not, what are you gaining by holding on to it? So that's one example from Pia's stuff on defects of character out of breaking free. People pleasing, like I said, is huge. I know for me, learning to act in my own best interest was huge. I was a first child hero in my family, and that simply meant that you had to sort of keep the peace. The family message was "Don't upset mother," and my mother was always upset. So people pleasing was, I really related to. It's dishonest. It leads to unnecessary arguments as a result of the resentment that just builds and grows. Learning to set boundaries, well, that's part of reparenting, and that's a whole other tape. But I hope this has been useful. It's MOvember, day 26. Be gentle with your heart, and I look forward to coming again tomorrow. My Mo sort of, it's getting a bit itchy now, but it's making its way back. Take care.